Welcome back to the Graham Stephan Show, and it's one of those rare times where I'm just going to turn on the camera and talk about exactly what's going on and what I'm finding throughout the housing market. There's no agenda, there's no script. I'm just going to be off the cuff on this one because what I'm finding is really interesting. To start, all of this really began with China's real estate market that has erased all of its gains from the last 20 years because they've simply built so much. New buyers aren't flooding in the market. You have so many more sellers, and that has completely collapsed their housing market, which led me to this here. Apparently 1.1 million American homes are now in negative equity, up a massive 15% in a single year. Now you might be asking yourself here, but Graham, what is negative equity? I haven't heard that term before. But you know what, man, it was quite common. When I started doing real estate in 2008, negative equity was everywhere. And it's this concept that you owe more on the house than what the house is worth. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when they've bought a property from like 2022, 3, and 4, and they locked in a low interest rate, they might be fine. Their payment might be normal. But a buyer today is going to have to pay substantially more because they're getting a 6.5% interest rate, whereas a buyer a few years ago is paying a 3% interest rate. So when a new buyer comes in, they're going to say, I can't afford that same monthly payment, and therefore I can't afford to buy your house unless the price comes down. But the issue for a lot of sellers these days is that they say, okay, well, for me to be able to break even on the sale, counting for 6% commissions and closing costs, I have to get this amount, and I can't get this amount. I could only get like basically what I paid or maybe a little less. And that means their equity is completely wiped out once you account for those commissions and closing costs. And that is why in California, we have an average of $25,000 of negative equity. Nevada, $16,000 of negative equity. Arizona, negative $24,000. Texas, negative $19,000. And somehow Wyoming, they're crushing it over there. Wyoming is flush with cash. Like if you look at the entire country, Wyoming just stands out like a sore thumb. They're actually sitting on $23,000 worth of equity. So this all means that if people need to sell, if they're in a position where they had no choice, they can't stay where they're at, they're gonna have to take a loss on that property in order to move it. Or they're gonna foreclose on it. But I mean, these aren't like big enough numbers to me that would signal walking away entirely and foreclosing on a house, but it does signal that most likely people are gonna have to either lose their equity or their down payment in a property or come up with some extra cash to bridge the gap on this. Which then leads me to this over here, is that most Americans now think it's a bad time to buy a house. 67% of US adults say it's a bad time to buy a home, while only 29% say it's a good time. Now, of course, when it comes to this, it's the young adults ages 18 to 34 who are the most pessimistic from all the age groups, with 77% of them saying it's a bad time to buy, compared to 63% of those aged 35 to 54 and 64% of those aged 55 and older. Now, some of that also has to do with the fact that apparently the housing market's running out of buyers. Now, I highly recommend, if you guys are on Twitter, follow the Kobesi letter. I really hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I really like them a lot. I find that their research is fantastic, and they just have some good data surrounding them. But when it comes to this, it's estimated that there's an extra 46% more home sellers than buyers in February, which is the biggest difference since Redfin began collecting data in 2013. Now, when you compare that to where we were in 2022, there were 36% more buyers than sellers. So now it's just completely flipped to the opposite, where more people want to sell than there are people who want to buy. This also comes at a time where, believe it or not, with all the bad data that's out there, pending home sales rose 7.7% year over year, reaching their highest level since September of 2022. Now, of course, when it comes to pending home sales, some of that is a little mortgage specific, and we saw like right before the conflict in the Middle East, mortgage rates were going down. They were trending downwards. Everyone was so optimistic for a rate cut this year. And then all of a sudden, the Middle East stuff happened and mortgage rates went back up. So some of this could be some of that pent-up demand of like, oh, mortgage rates are coming down, things are getting better. Let's go and buy a house right now. So I would be interested to see how this changes over the next month, maybe month and a half, give or take. But when it comes to selling prices, the median sales price for a new single-family home fell $21,600 month over month, or 5.3% in March, to its lowest level since July of 2021. This also means when you adjust for inflation, the median real home price fell 6.3% month over month, the lowest since 2014. Now, this next part is where things get really interesting. This is the part that I'm really into. And a lot of this other stuff I brought up only to give you context of what's going on. But here's what I find really interesting, okay? According to their research, this suggests that a handful of luxury homes are inflating the average price upwards, while most Americans are purchasing at significantly lower price points. After all, when it comes to this, the income needed to buy a typical US home has increased 79% in just the last 6 years, which means you now need to make $93,000 a year just to finance the typical property here in the United States. Although before we go into the next topic, there is one more part about the economy that rarely gets discussed, yet it affects almost everybody, and that would be travel. Like we just saw what happened to Spirit Airlines. Believe it or not, travel is one of the first places that people start cutting back when things are getting tight, and it's also one of the places that people start spending more money on once they feel confident again. Like people still want vacations, they want to get out of town, they want to visit family, and they still want someone who could help them make the most of it. Even for myself, the more I've traveled and the more I help coordinate travel for a mastermind that I run with a small group of entrepreneurs every single quarter, the more I've realized that good travel planning is not just booking a hotel. It's knowing where to stay, what's worth it, what's not worth it, what's overpriced, what's a good deal. It's a lot that goes into it, and that, of course, is where our sponsor, Fora, is there to help. For those unaware, Fora is a modern travel agency built for people who love planning and want to help others travel well. As a Fora advisor, you'll get access to their all-in-one platform that gives you the tools, training, booking technology, payment support, and community to help turn your passion for travel into a viable business. Or basically, you get to earn a commission for every trip that you book. So instead of all that effort going to waste, you actually get something back for it. And what I like about this is that you're not just guessing on your own. Your Fora membership gives you access to industry training, a global community of travel experts, and more than 7,000 preferred travel partners, from iconic hotels and cruise lines to smaller boutique properties. This means that you can help your clients get elevated travel experiences and VIP perks that most people aren't aware of or don't know how to get. So whether you're already the person putting together trips for friends and family, or you just love researching and putting together the perfect itinerary, Fora gives you the professional tools and support to take it seriously. All you have to do to become a Fora advisor and start earning commissions is to go to foratravel.com/YouTube or click the link down below in the description to learn more and get started. Again, that's foratravel.com/YouTube with the link down below to get started today. Thank you so much. Enjoy. Now let's get back to the video. So what's going on with the housing market? Well, I will tell you, because again, this is just what I'm seeing firsthand. I probably spend, I want to say, an hour, maybe 2 hours a day of researching the housing market. I see every property that comes on the market, everything that sells throughout Las Vegas, Nevada, California, Florida. I just love seeing what's going on. It's like one of my hobbies. I have these like Zillow alerts all set up, and I'm like, oh, I track prices, and I see I kind of basically just bet against myself, and I say, oh, I think this property will sell for this and this, and then I compare if I'm right or wrong. But what's interesting is that baby boomers are dominating the housing market as the largest share of both buyers and sellers, per the National Association of Realtors. Why is this? Well, I will give you my own theory of exactly what's going on. First-time home buyers, Gen Z, younger millennials, or millennials with not a lot of money. I hate to say it, you're f***ed, okay? There's no way around it. You are absolutely in the toilet. Why is that? Well, unless you have significant assets invested, you are just getting reamed every day with rising prices, inflation. We're seeing more national debt. They're printing more money, and they're doing it at the expense of people who don't have extra money and disposable income to invest. But here's what I'm noticing. All of a sudden, throughout Las Vegas, California, there are an influx of buyers. And I'm trying to think, where are these buyers coming from? They're coming out of the woodwork all of a sudden. And you could say, well, maybe they're moving out from Washington because of the millionaire's tax. And there aren't that many people moving right now. Yes, they exist, but not to this degree. They're not like instantly up and leaving overnight. There's a lot of people there that will probably have to take a year or two to really exit the state, to move and all that good stuff. But What I am finding is that right now, because the stock market's moving up so much, you're getting all of these buyers who have this extra confidence because the market is at its all-time high, their portfolio's doing the best it's ever done in history, and they're saying, well, now I could just trim some of this and put it over here and buy this house. If interest rates are a little higher, I don't really care that much because I've just made so much money in the market. And I don't think it's a coincidence over the last 2 months, give or take, that I have seen more properties just randomly open up in escrow at prices that I think is dumb, okay? Dumb prices. And I'm trying to think the only rational explanation, just anecdotally from what I'm seeing, is the market's doing well, and they're trimming some of that, putting it back in real estate. And we're seeing a very bifurcated market because the market that I'm seeing with the most traction right now in Las Vegas is $5 million and higher. Keep in mind, most of the market in Las Vegas is probably 850 grand or lower. And that market is suffering to a certain degree because one, those buyers are really impacted. When mortgage rates go up a little bit, that could mean the difference of qualifying for a house or not. But the 5 million plus segment, even though it makes up a smaller portion of the entire market here, a lot of those buyers are also heavily invested in the markets. And so those are the buyers that are not as price sensitive, that can go and pay these prices. And they are bidding up some of these properties to levels that I don't see it worth it, okay? Unless you're just trimming these like crazy NVIDIA gains or you have private equity and this and that, whatever, okay? But this basically means the average person in the housing market is getting screwed, and everyone else who's invested is able to reap the benefits of both, a somewhat stagnated market for the most part, but then using that as leverage to get great deals in properties and just buy them outright. And the level of cash deals that I've seen lately in the market is astounding. A lot of the deals that I'm seeing, they're cash at 5 million plus. And it's one of the reasons why I have this chart here that says the US stock market has almost never been this expensive in 150 years of data. The PE ratio is currently at 38, the second highest reading in history, only surpassed by the dot-com peak of 44.2. Now, I have said this before, but Ben Carlson of the Wealth of Common Sense blog, he has pointed out that this PE ratio, when you look back really to 1880, is not the best to look at. Like, it includes a lot of data and a lot of information from an economy that's no longer relevant today. And I see his point, okay? Because before the computer, companies operated differently. They were restricted in terms of their reach. And really, as you could see, since the year 2000, our PE ratios have skewed higher. And so Ben Carlson points out that the PE ratio today that we're at is high, but it's nothing unusual given the last 30 years of data. And if we just extrapolate and look at the right half of the chart, this could just be the new normal because this is the way the internet works. This is the way other companies and businesses in the world is going to come together with AI. And we have a global marketplace now that never existed 30 plus years ago to this degree. So by that metric, we could very well just be in a new normal where all of this data is somewhat irrelevant. This is also why they say that the Buffett indicator might be completely broken. And for the longest time, this was always a measure of how well the stock market is valued relative to its past performance. And for a long time, the Buffett indicator has been overvalued. If you've looked at that metric, you basically think I shouldn't have invested over the last 15 years because it's been high outside of the great financial crisis. But this really argues that GDP badly undercuts the digital economy because you have YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, Gmail, Google. Same applies to AI models and all these new technologies that the Buffett indicator was never designed to fully take into account when it comes to their valuations. Now, yes, it is no surprise the stock market is expensive, okay? I found this interesting too. According to Charles Schwab, it's either very expensive or expensive relative to past performance across every single metric that they track, which is quite remarkable. All of that is to say that right now in the housing market is just dominated by older people who have assets, who are making money in the stock market, taking some of that money and then reinvesting it back into housing, or people who have significant amounts of money tied up in AI, chip companies. I mean, if you're in that segment of the market, money is coming so easily right now. Money is coming faster than it ever has been in decades. And so again, I think for those people in that market, They are flooding these houses, they are bidding them up, they are offering these cash deals, and everyone else is kind of, unfortunately, screwed a little bit for the rest of the market that seems to be beginning to level off and cooling off in terms of affordability, prices. Yes, they are still expensive, but relative to what you're seeing in the luxury market, that's exactly what's going on. So I would love it, by the way, if you guys give me your own take down below in the comments section. I will do my best to read and reply to as many of you as I can. And let me know what's going on your end. And also, don't forget to check out our sponsor, Fora. I felt really bad. I posted them in a prior video, and that video, for some reason, just like completely bombed. Like, it just seems like people would rather me just kind of rant to the camera for a little bit, which I'm good with. Like, I kind of prefer this over the reaction. I just started getting tired of the reaction videos. Unless it's a great video, I prefer just chatting. Just chatting with everybody, something a lot more low-key. So feel free to check out Fora because, again, I felt bad for them. And with that said, thank you so much. Hit the like button, subscribe, and till next time.